I've been wanting to do a video about my home network for some time. So as I'm currently planning to redesign it, it feels like now is a good time to explain why it is how it is, what's wrong with it, and why I hope the changes I'm planning will make it more secure and easier to use and maintain. I designed the current setup about 6 years ago, based on a simple WAN, LAN and DMZ model, using a Netgear GS724T managed switch, which I bought quite cheaply on eBay. All the internal devices, computers, TVs, NAS, phones, etc. were in the LAN segment, and all the untrusted devices, guests, game servers, security cameras, etc. were in the untrusted segment. While this seemed like a good idea initially, there are now some major problems with it which I need to address. To be fair, some of them have always been there. Some are the result of my children growing up and my requirements changing, and others are the result of new IoT devices and the internet changing generally. I started with a router in the lounge, and then added another in the loft because the signal was too weak up there. And then, because I was still experiencing Wi-Fi signal problems, I ended up adding another in the kitchen and another on the first floor, giving me 4 in the house. We then had a big summer party one year and I needed music in the garden, so I added another router in the shed at the end of my garden. In order to protect the home network, I also cabled and installed a completely separate Wi-Fi network for guests to use. This had one router in the garage and a second at the end of the garden. So, I now have 2 completely separate physical networks and 7 access points. That's a lot of wire, a lot of access points, and a lot of Wi-Fi bandwidth. What can I do to sort it out? Problems, issues, and requirements. The first one is too many access points. 7 is just too many in a residential property. 2. Despite the large number of access points, there's just 2 for guests, and as a result, the guest Wi-Fi experience is poor. 3. As a result of problem 2, the children kept giving their friends access to the internal network. Problem 4. With lots of people working from home, I want to segregate the work computers from my home network. Problem number 5. I have a dedicated backup server, which I want to put on a private network segment, so that no rogue devices can find it through scanning. 6. The security cameras are essentially self-contained, and they transfer a lot of data between the cameras and the NVR, and I want them on their own segment to avoid any interference from other devices. 7. I want to be able to access my Plex server from the internet. 8. Phones are normally live on the internet, so they don't need to be particularly protected, and I want everyone to be able to cast or share to any of the local IoT devices such as TVs and music players in the house. So that's the problems and requirements, and this is how I hope I'm going to meet them. If I activate VLAN support using 802.1q tagging on the switch, I can have multiple network segments without having to run ever more cables. In fact, I can actually use less cables because multiple VLAN segments can all share a signal cable. Secondly, replacing the vendor supplied software on the Wi-Fi access points and replacing it with OpenWRT will enable me to support VLANs for Wi-Fi devices and reduce the number of access points I have on my network. This will also make me more popular with my neighbours, as I currently have a very heavy Wi-Fi footprint. So, the high level design, I'm going to create 6 VLANs. VLAN 1, with an ID of 10, will support all IoT devices which might need to access the internet, but will not support any inward traffic. VLAN 2, with ID 20, will be for any devices which require an inward connection from the internet. At the moment, only my Plex server fits this role. VLAN 3, with ID 30, will host home PCs and the NAS. VLAN 4 will host working from home computers and laptops. I'm going to try to subdivide this into individual companies, but I'm not quite sure if it will work, so I may end up with just a single shared segment. If so, this will be ID 40, or if I can get separate segments for each company, then it'll be 41, 42, 43 as needed. VLAN 5 will host the security cameras and will, as far as I can manage it, be completely physically self-contained to reduce network contention. I'm not expecting this to be too difficult, as all the devices currently sit on a single PoE switch. And then finally, VLAN 6 with ID 60 will be a separate segment for the backup server. This runs Linux and uses rsync to connect to the NAS and copy files onto its own disk. There is no copying to the backup server. The backup server reaches out and pulls data to it. So that's the theory. How will I actually build this out? I have a small Protectly device running pfSense. It's low power, passively cooled, with 4 1 gigabit Ethernet ports. It's also got 2 USB 3 ports, one of which I want to use in the future as a 4G backup WAN connection. So, the WAN Ethernet port will connect to my ISP's router. The second port, labelled LAN, will service VLANs 30, 40 and 60. The third port, labelled OPT1, will service VLANs 10 and 20. And the fourth port, labelled OPT2, will service the security cameras and NVR on VLAN 50. So, what will the network actually look like? The GS724T smart switch will form the backbone of the network. I will need to switch it from port-based VLAN, which it is at the moment, to 802.1q tagged VLAN mode, so I can have traffic from more than one VLAN on a single port. For simple devices, or where there is only one device on the port, I will just use untagged traffic with the default assigned by the switch. So, starting from the top left, I will connect the LAN, OPT1 and OPT2 ports of the firewall. Bottom left, I will connect the cable from the shed, which will have the backup server connected and support the IoT, outbound and working from home networks. Next, the cable from the lounge, which supports the PS5 and Sky TV box, including the IoT outbound and working from home networks. Next, the first floor router, supporting the second PS5 and working from home network. And next, the loft router, supporting the IoT outbound and working from home network. And then finally in this block, the cable from the smaller GS305E smart switch, which will support the kitchen router, my PC, IoT outbound and remaining working from home devices. I'm reserving the lower right segment for the non-VLAN aware or capable devices, including the laser printer, the Plex server, the NAS server and the security cameras on their unmanaged PoE switch. And that's it. This is the first in a sequence. I'll be bringing more videos as the work progresses and covering any problems which I discover along the way. Please feel free to comment with any suggestions or advice, and don't forget to like and subscribe to be notified as soon as the new videos land. Thanks so much. See you soon.